Welcome back to my channel, Family Tech, where you get all the tech tips, news, and information you didn't even know you need. But today I'm so excited because I have as a guest my friend, my friend Carley Knobloch.
I'm somewhere. I'm
Oh,
over here. I'm over there. I'm over
somewhere, yeah.
here. It's
But
so
it's
great
so
to be
fun.
here. And I'm so happy that we're going to be talking about smart home and happy to be on your show.
Thanks. When I was thinking about like this smart home topic, I'm like, I've got to ask Carley because she is the ultimate resource for smart home stuff. She's frequently on HGTV and the Today Show. She's all over the place. So, no better person to discuss this with than Carley.
And like more favorite topic for me anyway. So I could talk about it forever. So what do we want to know? What are we going to talk about?
Right. Well, let's jump right in then. So, like, what are you seeing with smart home trends right now? Like, what's getting popular? What's going on?
Yeah, it's funny. Some years it's just kind of like same as last year, like not a lot of movement. And I feel like the pandemic has really pushed a lot of things forward. So
Yeah.
I would say some of the things that I'm really seeing now as like prevalent trends are things like touchless technology. We're all trying to touch things less, especially icky things that lots of
Right.
people touch, like faucets or even toilet flushing handles. Soap dispensers, anything to do with washing your hands. And even in your own kitchen or bathroom, having that touchless tech, just kind of making things a little bit less yucky. And then on that note too, like a lot of at-home medical stuff. Obviously, Zooming with a doctor became a little bit more normal and sort of part of people's routines when they were in quarantine. And there's so many more tools now that you can have at home where you can, let's say, take your blood pressure or check your blood sugar or things like that that can directly communicate with your doctors so that you know or they know if there's a problem. And of course, the Apple Watch having so many different health features now is really becoming like a physician's assistant at this point. So that's been a huge trend. And then the thing that is kind of most interesting and exciting to me is home health. So like how to make your home a healthier place to live. So whether it's air quality or water quality or circadian lighting, which is a cool fancy term for basically lights that kind of help you wake up in the morning and help you go back to sleep in the evening and help mimic kind of the sun's different spectrums of light at different times of day, which helps our human bodies kind of, ease into sleep and wake up more readily. So all of those kinds of things are just like home trends that I'm specifically very excited about.
Yeah. A lot of people just think of like smart home as, your lock or your sprinklers, like just automating that stuff. But you're right. Like all of this stuff is, making our homes healthier, making us healthier. I love that.
Yeah,
I
me
know I'm
too.
so used to like having those like automatic like soap dispensers that like sometimes when I'm at home, I'm like, oh, I have to pump this? What
Yeah.
is this?
My husband and I laugh because we have a Toto toilet in our master bathroom. And of course, that's the very smart toilet that will open for you and clean itself afterwards and all of that. And so we always just laugh that like every other toilet in the house is
Right.
broken as they don't
Yeah.
like greet us and open for us as we come to the bathroom. So
You're like, come
yeah,
on, toilet. Get
bad
with the
toilet.
program.
Exactly. So yeah, we get used to these things, and it's sort of like that meme of the baby trying to like open a magazine picture by like pinching it and spreading it, right? Like we just kind of get used to the smart, dispenser that gives us the soap, and then when it doesn't
Right.
give us the soap, we're like, oh right, I actually have to pump
Yeah.
the thing. So
Oh,
yeah, this is the future. We're living in it.
yeah. Funny story. I was at a 60th birthday party for my friend, and there was like picture frames on all the tables and everything. And my friend did the same thing, like, you know, 50-year-old person like picked up the picture frame and is like, and I'm like, that won't do that.
It's a weird transitional time we're all living in.
Right. Yeah. And then again, as a side note, I'm so short. You know me. You've met me. Um, that like I think I toilets have a hard time picking up that I've like left because when I'm out and about, like I have to like squeeze myself against the like door to trigger it to like flush.
These
It
things
doesn't
are just
register
not
that I've
perfect.
done yeah. I
They're,
think that it feels stupid.
now we're into a whole different discussion about like who's designing these products and are
Yeah.
they as suitable for a very petite woman as they are for like the dudes that probably programmed them, and that's a whole other
Right.
show.
Totally different show, yeah. But
Yep.
I'm often, like, squeezing against the
You're like,
door, like,
hey, toilet, I have
"I'm
left the
here.
building.
I am standing up, I promise."
It's not the future
Uh,
you were promised. I get it.
right. Yeah, I often have to promise people that I am standing. Yeah.
That's so funny.
So what is kind of a product that has blown you away when it came out? Like, it can be something that came out, like, 10 years ago or whatever, but when you saw it, you were like, "Oh my gosh."
Well, I'm glad that you said it could come out 10 years ago because to me, when you sent me this question and I was thinking about it, I've been sort of in smart home since early days, as a
Right.
as a student, as a media, person, and just kind of watching as things got kind of spotty and complicated and started to get easier and more mainstream. One of the To me, the gold standard of like a product that just was such a compelling story when it came out was the Nest thermostat. I mean, that's really the first time that thought to myself, okay, because I think at that point, and this was obviously so many years ago, but we had a lot of
Right.
products that were like, okay, it's a smart toaster because it has an app and you can turn it on from your phone, or it's a smart light switch, and why can't I just go over to the light switch? And that
Right.
was kind of the common complaint. Like, really, we need a phone, to turn on our lights now. And
Yeah.
so then here comes the Nest thermostat, and it is making something that was completely opaque and off limits to users completely transparent. And not only that, but changeable and tweakable by the user. So suddenly you now know exactly how much money and energy it's taking to heat and cool your home. And you can modify how you heat and cool your home to take advantage of times where the energy is less expensive and less taxing on the system. So you have this great sustainable story, but you also have this great story for people's wallets. And this is, to me, was like the gold standard of what I always look for, which is smartphones, smart homes are cool and smart home stuff is neat, but like, is it solving a real problem for people? And so to me, that's always the gold standard. And obviously there have been so many great products like that since, and there's been so many duds that are just like, wah wah, like we don't
Yeah.
really need this. Just because it can be smart doesn't mean it always should be smart. And so I really look for like a good story that is going to be, affect someone's wallet, affect somebody's time, their sanity, make their lives easier, make them feel more safer. And so anyway, the Nest is one. The other one is Sonos. And we've been a
Oh, yeah.
Sonos family for almost as long as they've been in business, which I think now is probably at least 15 years. We only recently had to replace some of our Sonos devices because they weren't no longer compatible with like the new operating system. But, you know, in the world of technology that we live in today, to have audio equipment that is still works and is encouraged, that we kept calling Sonos saying, do we need to replace these? Or like, no, just keep updating the firmware and the software. They just made them better and better and better, and without replacing the hardware. And not only that, but they're gorgeous and a pleasure to have in your home because they are just beautiful objects to have around. And they've gotten even more and more beautiful as time's gone on.
Yeah.
To me, that's the other thing that I look for is like how, what is the integrity of the product without us having to replace things constantly, because that's sort of like, the lifespan of tech has just gotten shorter and shorter. So to have a product in my house for 10 years that I didn't need to replace is kind of amazing.
That's super amazing. And I think the audio quality with Sonos is really phenomenal too. Like you
Incredible.
guys are in the music industry, like that's really important to you, I'm sure.
It is. Yeah, for sure. Especially my husband's like such an audiophile and he listens
Right.
to studio speakers that are top of the line all day long. And so, to have Sonos, but really the magic of Sonos is that some of the products are speakers, but some of the products just enable you to use the speakers you already have, whether they're in your ceiling or whether they're just, floor speakers that you already own, and uses them as a conduit to add them to the Sonos system. So you can have, you know, your $50,000 speakers if that's important to you.
Right.
And Sonos has a product that will help you get those onto the system so that you can use them in your whole home audio solution. So that's always also was something that I loved about Sonos, is that they weren't just saying like throw out your speakers and buy our speakers. They have those products for people who just want to pop a speaker in their kitchen now or want to pop a speaker in their bathroom. But if you already have a home stereo system, they also have the products that help you add that to the system.
Yeah, that's awesome. And speaking about the longevity, a lot of people, I hear this from everybody, like, oh, my fridge doesn't last as long as like my fridge did in the 70s. And, the same with like cars and everything is like, feels like that longevity is getting shorter and shorter. But like, I always kind of put it in this perspective for a lot of people, and it's great when a product can have that longevity, like that's amazing.
Yeah.
But for things like, where people are like, my refrigerator doesn't last as long. It's like, do you know how much more it's doing now than your refrigerator did in the 70s? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think, this is definitely a complaint, and it's also kind of like a lament, like we used to have these more mechanical objects and now we have these computing objects. So you used to
right.
be able to open the hood of a car and kind of play with it if you knew what you were doing.
I was gonna say maybe you can.
Maybe not, no, not me, but someone else could. But now it's a computer, and it really
Yeah.
requires somebody who understands the programming of the car. And so, and then, obviously Tesla, and those types of cars being super extreme examples where, if the computer goes down, the car drives, but it doesn't do much else. So,
Right.
and so it's like we don't have these mechanical devices that are easy to fix anymore. They're almost cheaper to just replace for the company or sometimes for the consumer. And so we've kind of lost something that was quaint to people, like opening the back of your television and
Right.
grabbing your monkey wrench and fixing it. Is not really something that you can do anymore. I mean, I'm sure someone can do it, but for the most part, if your TV breaks, it's time to get a new TV. And so, now we can have a whole other show about e-waste and
Right.
a whole other show just about this whole compulsive cycling of, the new phones each year, and this conditioning that we have about like, got to get the latest one, got to get the latest one. And then when it comes to your refrigerator, which you don't typically replace every 1 to 2 years,
Right.
then it's like, okay, well, do I want to get a fridge that has a bunch of smart tech in it? Is it still going to be supported in 2 years, 4 years, 6, 8, 10? What are the chances? Is it going to still be relevant? Is it going to be updatable? Are they going to terminate this whole project and I'm going to be stuck with some dud with a screen on it that doesn't work? And, so I personally, even though I'm the smart home girl, I'm personally reticent about, that type of smart tech on an appliance that you're hopeful to have for 10 to 20 years.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So we've talked about Sonos. Tell me about some more of your favorite smart home products.
Yeah. So, two things that come to mind. One is, we talked about Nest as the smart optics for your energy use. There's a great product called Phyn, Phyn. It's a company owned by Belkin, which is, a huge tech company, but they have put out a product that's kind of like the Nest thermostat, but for your water. So it's a leak detection system that operates by kind of like listening to your pipes And everything that you do in your house, apparently, and I just, I worked with them on the launch of the product. And so I know a lot about it. And it was just so fascinating that whether you use your shower or your washing machine, or you're washing dishes in the kitchen, or you're sprinkling your backyard with the sprinkler system, everything has like a sonic footprint in the pipes, including like a drip leak, right? And so, or a gusher of a leak, right? And
Right.
so, Finn is a smart device
Did I
that
spell that right?
yes, yes. So you add it to your water line, and it can detect what you're doing. So now again, all of a sudden you have a sense of how much water does it take for me to shower? Could I knock 2 minutes off of it and maybe save some of my water bill? Or how much water is it taking for my daughter to shower because she's in there for like half an hour just like luxuriating, and that kind of thing, or the washing machine or whatever. And then
Right.
the other thing is that, and they have two different devices. One you actually install out by your water main, and one is more of an internal product. But for the bigger outdoor product, if it detects a leak and you're out running errands, you can actually turn off your whole water line to the house remotely. And so imagine if you're on vacation, you come back to a flooded basement.
Yeah.
If you have a second property, you're not there all the time. This could be absolutely like thousands of dollars and priceless memories and all of that saved. Mold remediation, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the things that can happen from a water leak obviously are a huge disaster. So anyway, I love Finn. I think it's a brilliant product. And then the other thing, just real quick, is like Kohler has made some absolutely stunning digital shower control interfaces. Usually the interface for this type of product is just like a big black screen, or something not very attractive that you would then add to your pretty bathroom, and it would be kind of an eyesore. These are like brass, like framed in brass. They have these really stark kind of like e-ink screens, like black and white, very minimal. These beautiful dials with brass wraps, and they're just so pretty. So if you have a bathroom and you have brass fixtures, you want to have a digital shower controls, program a whole thing with, make it like the Bellagio waterfall in your shower, and and just just have different programs for different members of the family. It always knows your perfect temperature. I mean, all those fun things about a digital shower control, but it's beautiful too, and that makes me so happy.
Right? That's so funny you say that, because sometimes you just get that stark screen and you're just like,
Yeah.
ugh. I've got a light switch that's just like a screen. I'm like, wouldn't it be nice if it was a little prettier?
Yeah. I
But
mean, actually, just, one of my other favorite products right now that I swear I've sold 10 of them since I put one in my house to friends that have come
right,
by
right.
is the Samsung Frame television,
Oh,
because
I want one so
oh
bad.
my God, it's so gorgeous. And
Yeah.
we have a little weekend place, and I was like, we're not putting a TV in because we're gonna enjoy each other's company. And eventually I relented, and I was like, okay, well, if we're putting a TV in, I don't want a big black box on the screen that invites watching. So
Right.
it mounts. So for those who aren't familiar, the Samsung Frame is looks like a framed photograph, and
Or painting. Yeah.
yeah, or painting. And so it's super thin. It has an actual frame, and you can choose the color. So a walnut or an oak frame, or white or black, I think are the four colors. But then I think other people make, all kinds of other whimsical additions that you can add. And when you're not watching television, it has a beautiful matte screen. You can put up a photograph of your family or a beautiful piece of art, and it kind of disappears onto the wall and looks like a photograph or a painting. And so to me, I put it on a big gallery wall in our weekend place, and it just kind of disappears into the wall and doesn't look like a big black television. So
Yeah.
love that. So pretty. And we live with these things. So if you care about how your environment looks and feels, it's nice to have technology that is additive and doesn't sort of detract from your decor.
Yeah. I think I'm putting that on my Christmas list this year, because I was at
Highly
CES.
recommend.
Yeah, I was at CES this last year. I mean, and they've been out for a couple years, but
Yes,
like,
getting
I think I
better,
just
and they're
stared at
making them
that for
bigger. Yes, yeah, and they're getting better quality. They're making them larger. They're just so pretty.
Yeah, so gorgeous. Those are good favorites for sure.
Yes.
I forgot one thing that I was going to talk about. What about a blown away product for me? As you're talking about when the Nest came out, um, that was just really inventive,
Yes.
innovative. Um, similar for me for the sprinklers. I'm in tech. I've been in IT for 20 years. I could not figure out how to program my sprinklers, like ever.
Completely agree. It's
Right?
the it's the scariest box in my whole house. I'm like,
Yes.
every time I go out there, it's like for the first time. I don't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't get it. So when I put in smart sprinklers, I'm like, oh, okay, like this is how it should have always been because there's no way I
Totally.
could figure out that box beforehand.
Yeah, and it's easy to install, right? Did you get the Rakio or Ratio? I actually don't know how to say it, but which one did you get?
Well, so the first one I got was the Skydrop.
Mhm.
That was forever ago, but they're defunct.
Ugh,
Um, and
RIP.
so I switched to Beehive,
Uh-huh.
which is from Orbit. And so that I'm
Nice.
like, I think you'll be around for a while. Orbit's been around for a bit.
Yeah.
So I went with the Beehive.
That is always the challenge with these companies and making the choices. And I know we're going to talk about integration and all the different apps that we end up accumulating. And so, yeah, it can be a big factor looking at these things and going and making a bet, basically, like, are you going to be around in a few years? Because I'd like to not
Right.
have to rip this out and start new. But I've been there. We've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think we'll touch on that maybe a little more. I mean, I didn't put it in the questions, but it's a good one to go into
Yeah.
because there's been a few products where like I loved my pet net. Um,
Mhm.
it was the best thing ever, and then they went away, and I'm like, how am I supposed to feed my pets now?
I know it is weird when you feel really compelled, like there's a use case that solves a real problem for you, and then you're like, huh, I guess this didn't solve a real problem for other people because it's not here anymore. And you're like, well, I really, really liked that and got used to it. And it's weird when that happens.
Yeah, and now I'm sad. So yeah, let's dig into though that segmentation of smart home devices. So, there's an app for this and an app for that and an app for that. Like what kind of integration are you seeing out there? Do we have any hope for like one app to rule them all?
Yes, I think so. So, two things. One, I think in early days, I remember having this conversation with people about, like, even if you're only buying one piece, you need to really think about the next four that you want to integrate, because you don't want to back yourself into a system where this isn't compatible with that. I mean, in the early days, it was really a costly mistake if you wanted to have this thing, but you already had these two things and they weren't compatible, and then it was kind of a mess. Um, One of the things, and then of course with Google Home and Amazon Alexa, and then to some extent, a little late to the party, but Apple HomeKit, it became a little bit easier because especially Alexa, I think was really Amazon was really the first company to say, here's the developer kit, here's the sensors, here's how they made it so easy for other third party companies to make their products Alexa compatible. And Google followed suit. At least that's how I remember the timeline. I think
Yeah,
Amazon
no, that
really
sounds right to me.
had a huge push to just work with developers and create the biggest pile of compatible products earliest. And so now it's a lot easier because most products are compatible with all three, or at least the first two. um
Right.
Two things that are happening that I think are especially interesting. One we know about already, which is the smart assistants. So if you have Amazon Alexa in your home, or you have Google, hey Google, assistants in your home, and again, Apple HomeKit as well. This really democratizes smart home tech because suddenly you don't need an app at all. And even if the products are not necessarily all the way compatible, you're using this umbrella of voice command to talk to all of them. And then not only that, but guests in your home or children in your home that don't have all the apps on their phones because, as we said, it's a lot of apps, big mess.
Right.
All of a sudden they can enjoy and participate in the smart home. And grandma can say, hey, Alexa, turn down the music if she's bothered by the volume. So, I think that having that voice command umbrella over so many different things, even though they weren't sort of classically integrated like we would think of a control 4 system or some of these larger home integration systems where everything's under one app. Those are very costly and require a lot of programming and all of that. So suddenly to have a bunch of stuff you can bring in your home, install yourself, and use voice commands to talk to all of them with one speaker has been game changing. And then the other thing that's coming, that's like nascent and just starting, is this platform called Matter. And Matter has been around for a few years, but is just kind of rolling out now. All of the companies that were so invested in kind of like if you want to use our products, they have to all be Google compatible, they have to all be Alexa compatible. They've all kind of relaxed and relented, and they're all going to be compatible with Matter. So Matter is basically going to be one app to rule them all, easily add and remove devices without your network going crazy through their hub. They're all going to talk to the same platform, cross compatible with Google, Apple HomeKit, Wi-Fi, Zigbee, all kinds of other ways for things to be connected. And so finally, Matter is supposed to be kind of the holy grail in solving this problem that's been plaguing the industry for a long time and aggravating people for a long time.
Right. And I think that presents a barrier a lot of people to smart home stuff, because they're like, I don't want another app and all of this, and I'm going to get this, I'm going to have to download this app and this and then this app, and so I think that will kind of erase the last real obstacle people have for adopting smart home stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, even for me, who I obviously have some dexterity with this stuff, I don't want to deal with more firmware updates, more software updates, more learning curve. I mean, for regular people that aren't like steeped in this like we are, it's
Right.
it again back to my sort of first kind of manifesto piece of like, it has to solve a real problem. When it solves a real problem for people, if they're like, you know what, I don't have an alarm system in my home and I want to feel safer, or I want a door lock that will let me know when my kids are home from school because I'm at work, or, these are real problems that people have that technology can solve. And suddenly when it solves a real problem for you, you don't mind the firmware updates, you don't mind the software updates because there's a trade-off. So
Yeah.
if apps or devices are just kind of like, I don't know, I never even remember that my blender has an app or whatever. And then I'm updating the app and I'm updating the firmware, and now there's a problem and I can't connect. And it's like completely aggravating and not at all worth the trade-off of whatever smart features you might get from having a smart blender. Let's say, I'm just sort of picking on blenders for some reason, but so, but if it solves a real problem, it's worth the learning curve and all of the upkeep and the cost, quite frankly. So that's where I think it always comes back to.
Yeah, and I love your blender example, but I thought of an example right off the top of my head too. I have the Sonicare toothbrush that's all like connected and stuff. I don't even remember the last time I opened that app. Like, that's not solving a problem for me. I mean, if I had like teeth problems, maybe it would, but like, there's no way I'm ever like, when I'm trying to brush my teeth, okay, wait, let me open my app to brush my teeth and everything like that. So yeah, it's not solving anything for me. So I'm not going to bother with it.
That's the other thing too about voice control that's so wonderful for people is I think we all have app fatigue and we're all trying to stay off of our phones at one point of the day or another in general. So to have to flip open your phone to turn the lights on, to have to flip open your phone to use the security system or the shades or whatever, like more ways that we can use voice control or just ambient controls, to not have to constantly be getting on our phones, the better. So yeah. And I'm with you on the Sonicare.
Like, it's a great, like, but literally, I think I opened that app like the first like 2 days, and then I'm like, yeah, I'm done with that.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So related, how can IoT companies change so that more products can communicate with centralized hub? I mean, you're talking about Matter. So is this something that like all of the companies are going to need to agree to and like, okay, this is our standardized platform and things like that?
Yeah, well, I think it's already shifting. I mean, I think we kind of covered it, but like, I think it's already shifting. I think there was definitely this sense of this is our camp over here, that's their camp over there. You have to pick a side. They're never going to get along. These things are never going to get along. The developers have to pick a side. The consumer has to pick a side. And I think that's all relaxing at this point.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd see the day, but it's wonderful and is going to make things so much easier. So I think, how can they change? They can just be more open to making the consumer experience a little easier and a little bit sort of simpler, as opposed to we need to capture this user at the expense of the other camp or the other system, the other operating system, because it's dog eat dog out there. And now it's just like, okay, let's just make all of this better for everybody.
Yeah, and I don't think customer or consumers want to be locked into a specific platform. And I'm throwing some shade because I know that I hate Apple. Gonna throw a little shade their way, but like, all these companies are like, okay, yes, we do need to play nice together so that the consumer can have a better experience. And I would love to see Apple get on board with that. I'm
Yeah,
looking at
I mean,
you, RCS.
yes. So obviously your views are known and well established.
Okay.
I would only just say, to be fair to Apple, yeah, there has absolutely been the walled garden, the um, closed system. I think it comes from a good place. I think that the flip side is sometimes the Google Play store can be the Wild West and you don't know
Sure.
who's developing the apps and they're not as well vetted. And so I think this, especially with HomeKit, the security standards have just been a lot more intense than some of
Yeah.
the other systems. And so it comes from a place of just kind of wanting to protect the consumer, potentially at the expense of making it easy and simple and all of those kinds of things. So hear where you're coming from for sure. And then also kind of love the idea of someone smarter than me even vetting some of these products so that I don't have potential, spyware, that I accidentally, give someone access to because I installed an indoor camera or whatever.
Right.
Not that these things aren't possible with any product, but there's just a little bit more of like a discernment going on. I think at Apple, there always has been. And then the flip side of that is like, hey, let me decide. I want to have
Right.
the option to make my own choice. And for someone who's an informed choice maker,
Yeah.
it can feel frustrating. And for someone who potentially doesn't even know what they don't know about how they could really screw up their life, it's kind of a good thing. So I see both sides, but
Absolutely.
I totally hear where you're coming from.
Like, just had to get my dig in. It's
I
fine.
know, I got you. I got you.
So like I know a lot of people really want to know what kind of automations like do you love? Like you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I lived before I had this automation in place. Like
I'm so happy
give
you're
some a
asking
little
this
tips.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I am lucky to have a control four system in my home, and that means that it is truly integrate. Many products that I have are truly integrated into one app. Again, that's a costly system and requires programmers to come to your house and program it. And it's not necessarily for everyone, but I was lucky enough to work with Control 4 and installed a bunch of things into what was then a new house of mine. And so this home that was new at the time. And so I have a couple things, but I would imagine that many of these things are accomplishable with more out of the box, get them at Best Buy stuff. Some maybe not. So one thing I have is at the top of my stairs, I have a light switch that has two buttons on it. One of them says good night and it turns off all the lights, turns on the exterior lights, turns on a couple key little like lights, but at 10 or 20%, so that if someone's going down to the kitchen in the middle of the night, they have a little path, but it's all very dim and very chic and very like good night house. And then a second button right underneath the good night that sets my alarm to stay. So it's not a full featured alarm smart control, but it's just one button where if I know that we're all going up the stairs at the end of the night, the dogs are done going outside, I can set the alarm with one touch right there. And it's not an alarm panel. It's just a smart button that's integrated, that I've programmed to do that. So that's a really nice ritual. At the end of the day, the lights are off, the alarm is on, and like it's at the top of my stairs. And so as we go into our bedrooms, like those are the buttons that are right there. And the other one that I love is in the morning when you come downstairs in the kitchen, I have 4 buttons on a light panel that each correspond to a Spotify playlist for everyone in the family. So I can put on my playlist, and we can maintain the playlist on the Spotify app, but one touch button puts on my playlist or my daughter's playlist or my son's playlist. And so everyone can come down to the kitchen. If they're making breakfast or whatever, they can put on their playlist. I also have another one for NPR news. So I have 5 buttons that are each programmable. They're right on the wall in the kitchen, and they're sort of like the way to start the morning. And then, the other thing I wanted to say that is very easily accomplishable with a lot of the I have a Lutron shade on a very big picture window in my kitchen. It's battery operated, so it wasn't wired into the home. We installed it after we moved in. It takes like, I don't know, something crazy like 8 or 10 D batteries, but I've only replaced the batteries once in like 8 years. So they last forever. And every day when the late afternoon sun comes and just pounds on that window, the shades lower. And then when the sun sets, they come back up. And so if the shade's down, it's because the light would be damaging to the fabric on our banquette or the wood, or just, roasting and making the room hotter. So the shade lowers, prevents all of that. And then when the sun has set, it comes back up. So that's an automation that we programmed based on the time of day, and our system knows, what time it is and if it's daylight savings times or not. And so it can adjust. So we're never having to like reprogram it when daylight saving times comes. It does all that by itself, and it saves us from extra air conditioning and, fabric damage and all of that kind of stuff. And it just kind of makes me happy that the house is sort of like doing these little tweaks so that I don't have to.
Does it keep track of like sunset and sundown? Like, so so it adjusts the time. Nice. Like that's what I love too. So I have just lights, some smart lights, and same kind of thing is, it knows when sunset is and it knows when sun rises for that particular day. And it will turn the lights on when sunset happens and things like that. So I love that, how it like, I don't have to change it when daylight savings time come, or when like, the sunset becomes later and later and later. It just changes automatically, and that's awesome.
Yeah. One of the coolest sort of trifectas of products that I saw all working together in this really cool way was there is a skylight that Velux makes that's a smart skylight that can talk to your smart thermostat and also talk to any indoor fans that you have. And essentially between the 3 of them, they decide on what is the most energy efficient way to get your home to the desired temperature that you're asking for. So if you are too cold and you turn up the thermostat, does that or rather, if you're too warm and you turn down the thermostat, would it be most energy efficient to just pop the skylights and let out some of the hot air? Would it be most efficient to turn on the fan, or would it be the most efficient to put on the air conditioning? I guess it depends on how much cooler you wanted your house to be. So it was like it was like a symphony of smart home stuff talking to each other and assessing how best to give you your desired temperature with the most energy efficiency and the least reliance on air conditioning. And I thought that was so cool, and just definitely like to me transcends like smart home and goes to more like highly intelligent home, like savant.
Right, right. Like AI home.
Right. Yeah, it's making these decisions for you, and you're just kind of enjoying the house, and the
Right.
skylights are opening and closing, and they detect rain, so they're, "Oh, there's rain, and we're gonna close," and, like, you don't
Right.
have to run around doing this all, it's doing it for you.
Yeah. And I think that's where smart home devices like really shine is when you really don't even notice the like what it's doing and it's just doing it and helping you out.
1,000%. I completely agree. And if you sort of take it to the next level, right now, many of us have a bunch of these smart speakers, even though they've kind of gotten smaller, little puck size Alexas and things like that. But we've got them all over our house. There's a company called Josh.ai, and they are making kind of a third party voice control system for your smart home. Um, Almost like a more luxurious version of an Alexa or a Google Home, but it's not one of the big guys. It's their own boutique company. But they are creating uh, smart speakers that can hear you and obviously and talk to you. And they look like um, they're like these little round flat discs that just sit on the wall, and you can kind of masquerade them, like they have white ones that would blend into your white or dark ones that blend into a dark wall, and you don't know that they're there until you go, "Hey Josh," and then it talks to you from this very very minimal kind of thing that's architecturally kind of built into your home. So to me, that's like the next level of ambient controls where you walk into a room, you don't even see a speaker sitting on a counter taking up space, and you just kind of talk to your home and it just hears
Right.
you without, even knowing exactly what's going on. So that's sort of the next level, I think.
Yeah, we're inching closer and closer to a Jetsons house.
Yes, for sure.
I want to get Rosie in here at some
I'm
point,
waiting.
but
I'm waiting for Rosie to fold my laundry. That'll be when I know I've made
yeah.
it.
Absolutely. Although I have seen at CES some like of those laundry folding like
I
machines. I'm
know.
like, they're a little much at the moment, but
Well, they're just not coming to a, Best Buy near you anytime soon.
yeah.
That's the thing. It's like they're cool to see, but like when is that? Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
holding my breath for that to
Right.
show up at the local Walmart anytime soon. But interesting to watch.
Right, right. Interesting to see.
Yes.
Um, and just circling back to when you were talking about that timeline, I every year I think of when I go to CES, which is where I get to see you most of the time. Um, every year at the end, I'm like, okay, what was the theme for this year? And I remember one year going like, Alexa is the theme for this year. Like
Oh, yeah.
everything is Alexa compatible at the
Yep.
moment.
Yep. Yeah, they're definitely, especially with those big guys like Amazon or Google, big players in the industry have the power to really shift the narrative during that year. And I remember that year, and it was just Alexa, Alexa everywhere. And there were so many different booths that were featuring Alexa, and the developers were proud to be affiliated with Amazon. And so there was just so much branding everywhere because, everyone from all sides was really excited to be, in that kind of giant, uh, strategy. And so, yeah, there's definitely sometimes there are definitely themes to the year. Sometimes the theme of the year, early in the early days was just like smart home is a theme. Like we were
Right. Yeah.
in
I
those
remember that.
early days where it was like, oh wow, there's a bunch of security products and there's a bunch of lighting products, and like that's the story this year, is that actually some of these things that were kind of quirky and like your friend who is into like tinkering with things was into, or your super wealthy friend had their whole house decked out by some company, and that all of a sudden now these were things that might actually be available to regular people without too much headache to install in their home.
Yeah, which actually segues perfectly into my next question
Yeah.
is somebody doesn't have any smart home devices. They're like, okay, I want this beautiful automation where I just touch a button and it plays my Spotify playlist or whatever. What where would you start? Like, what product do you think you would start with if this is gonna be your first smart home product?
Yeah, I mean, I think, going back to where I keep harping, which is like the best place to start is with a problem that you have. So I think for a lot of people, finding out how easy it is to install what is essentially a peel and stick alarm system, like Simply Safe, or some of the more the Google alarm system, the Ring alarm system from Amazon. So they're essentially peel and stick wireless items that are easy to just kind of like add to your door. Now you have a door sensor, add to your window. Now you have a window sensor. You have one central panel that with your touch buttons to arm and disarm, and one kind of hub that you install, and you have an alarm system and an app on your phone, and now you can set it or see when it's gone off, check cameras. And so for someone who's renting, or for someone who just, has a smaller home that they don't want to make a huge wired alarm investment in, to be able to install a security system and to have that extra layer of safety and security is a huge deal. So I love a doorbell or even a smart lock for those same reasons. If you're having trouble with packages getting stolen, or you just want to be able to answer the door remotely if you're not home, or you don't want to come to the door, or want your kids to be able to answer the door without going to the door and unlocking it. Suddenly you have these really interesting stories that solve problems for families and for people in general. I love that your smart lock can tell you not just that it was unlocked, but when it was unlocked and by who. So you can create different passcodes for different members of the family, or the dog walker, or the housekeeper. And then you actually know that they came, and you know when they came and when they left, how long that dog walk was. Suddenly you have all this great data, or that your kids, were home in the middle of the day. Were they skipping school? What's going on? Or again, you're at work and you know that your child is home safe and locked in the house, so that you don't have to worry, did they leave the door unlocked? You can check the status. So these are, uh, these are things that just have an immediate, like, oh, I get how that would be immensely beneficial to me. As you start to move into like lights or shades, sometimes for people, they can feel luxurious. I mean, I love being able to turn off every light in my house as I walk out the door, or as I go upstairs for the night. Those are wonderful luxuries. I don't have to run around, make sure my kids turn off the lights in every room. But it's, when you talk about safety and security, it's a whole different thing. And so I think those are always the great places to start. And, are the things that kind of people like we said at the top of the conversation, like they can't remember what life was like before they had them.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of, I didn't send you this question, so I apologize to kind of throw this one at you. But speaking of safety and security, though, I know a lot of smart home devices get kind of a bad rap about getting hacked and things like that. Like, what's your take or opinion on like how to either protect yourself from that, or kind of your opinion on those stories?
Yeah, for sure. So what I like to say is that any smart device could be hacked, just like your home that's a dumb home could be broken into.
Right.
And so to me, you want to make sure that you are, if you think about a not smart home, right? You have locks on your doors, but they're only good if you use the lock, right? Keep your house
Yes.
locked. You have beautiful curb appeal, but it's really easy for someone to just walk right up to your front door. Or you could have a gate, or you could have a gate with two Dobermans. You basically want to make sure that your home is the least easy to break into in the neighborhood, right? And then they're going to move
Right.
on to someone more vulnerable. The bad guys are. So too with smart home technology. you if you don't change the password, and the password is password, or it's 000, what came with the route, your wireless router, which is a piece of your smart home security system. So you want to make sure you have strong passwords on your router, and on all the devices that you have, you want to use the two-factor authentication. And you basically just want to make it so much harder to break in that they go to the next house. And so, and this is, and we were going to talk about this, or we were talking about it before, and it's a perfect segue back into what we're talking about now, is how you make the decision about which device you bring into your home. So a lot of people are like, oh, Google's evil and I don't want to have Google watching me or whatever. But
Yeah.
Google has the resources to constantly be updating their security, patching their, the problems, and making sure that the product continues to be as safe and as hacker proof as it can be. Can you say the same about whatever, third party, I don't know what the brand
Mom
is,
and pop shop brand.
mom and
Yeah.
pop shop brand, or even startup brand that has good
Yeah.
intentions, but maybe over time they just don't have the resources. So you kind of need to do the research on the integrity of the brand and the manufacturer, and how, and kind of see how often they're updating their security patches. My dad and I are constantly arguing about this, and I'm like, don't ignore the updates. Like you have to keep making it safer, or you're going to have a problem. So
Yeah.
anyway, so I think it's really about leveraging every tool that you have, that some of them are just, stupidly easy, like making sure you have a strong password, to just make it as hacker proof as possible. But just like any home, if someone really wants to get in, they're probably going to find a way in. And so,
Sure.
you just kind of want to do the best you can.
Yeah, I'm going to hop on my soapbox for a second with the updates thing that you said. Because it's so true. Like when an update comes out, and I've explained this to people before, when an update comes out, they list everything that they have fixed. You're basically giving hackers a list of all of the ways to compromise your device if you didn't update.
Yes, 1,000%. And
Yeah.
most people are busy and it's in the middle of their day and it's a hassle, like, oh, it's an update and I can't. And then, that turns into a week. And my friend told me that when they updated, then all of a sudden my Microsoft Word didn't work. And so now I'm not going to do it. I mean, it's like these are the headaches that we have with our parents. But,
Yeah.
and sometimes that's true. Like sometimes an update will
Yeah.
temporarily make another piece of software, another part of your computer or your mobile device problematic.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, though, you have to know that they're not trying to bother you. They're trying to help you be safer. And so we all just kind of need to, again, do those things that are so easy. It just takes a minute to update something. Usually can happen in the background. Usually doesn't even interrupt your work day. Create those strong passwords. Make sure your router has a strong password. Change it occasionally. And, you've already done 98% more than most people, and that's just going to improve your statistics about how to keep the whole house safe.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned this too, but two-factor authentication is my second soapbox.
Yeah.
Anywhere you can put two-factor authentication, do it. Because even if you aren't handing over your password, companies are getting hacked every day. LastPass was recently hacked. Every company is getting hacked, and your stored username and password is now available for people to use on tons of different accounts to just try and see if you're using the same password and the same user account on all these different platforms.
Sure.
And it's a program. They don't have to like sit there and type in your stuff. Like they can try it in like thousands of accounts a minute.
Yeah.
So it's no fault of your own. But if you have that two-factor authentication, you can see, oh, somebody's trying to log into my account, and
Yeah.
stop it.
I hate when the password managers get hacked. It just makes my heart sink because
Right.
it's so important to me. I tell everyone that I know that they need a password manager and that they're safe, and they are generally safe. It's like when an airplane crashes. It's like how many thousands of flights have gone up and down successfully, and obviously it's very sensational when there's an airplane crash, but it statistically is so much safer than automobiles, which we get in every day. So, I think having those password managers is so important. and it kills me when they get hacked. But
I do still use LastPass, so
yeah,
I'm not.
I mean, I use 1Password, but I recommend
Yeah.
LastPass all the time. I made a video
Yeah.
about it a million years ago that still gets hits. And
Nice.
I was gonna say, I know for sure about 1Password, but I'm sure now LastPass as well. And you can tell me because you use it.
Yeah.
They have the monitors, so they will
Mhm.
tell you not only when they get hacked,
Yes.
but when another company gets hacked, I'll get an alert in my password manager that says, "Hey, this
Okay.
company just got hacked. You should probably change your password." So
Yeah.
without me having to go dig into tech blogs that monitor who's being hacked, I can see right in my manager where it might be a good time to change a password or two.
Yeah, and I'm sure all of them do this too. It'll tell you if you're using the same password on multiple accounts. Like, hey,
Yes,
maybe change some of those
yes,
because you don't want to use the same password on every account that you've got. So it'll
absolutely.
say, hey, I've noticed that these 5 accounts have the same password. So go ahead and change those.
Yeah, and I always tell people your email address is the keys to the castle, right? Because if you think about how do you change your password? How could a nefarious person change your password? Well, they can send themselves a change password and then they'll get an email. And if they're hacked into your email address, now they can change passwords on everything in your life. So um,
Yep.
the email address is the keys to the castle. That is something that should have a unique password, a long password. But when we're talking about smart home, your router is the keys to the castle. So if you want to make sure that your home is really rock solid, the foundation of that rock solidness is going to be to have a really strong, long password on your router. And a password
Yeah.
manager helps you with that because you don't have to remember it. It's just in
Right.
there. And you can look it up
Just
every
there.
time. It's like a secure phone book. Don't use your actual phone book. Like don't use your actual address book in your phone to hold your passwords. Very unsafe. But your password manager is encrypted, it's private, it's got all of your long super passwords that you would never be able to remember. And again, that's going to be your step one. And the two factor, I'm also, we're preaching to the choir here, the two of us.
Right, right. Well, I mean, but the audience though doesn't know. So
Yes.
definitely need them to understand that.
Yes.
And then with what you were saying with the router password, I can't even count how many people just have the default username and password on their router because they don't even log into their router. Like for the most part, they'll just plug it in. I set my Wi-Fi, like my Wi-Fi network name is on a sticker on the router, and I've just used that and I'm done. Like I
Yeah.
have internet and I don't care.
Yeah.
So like getting in there and changing that password is like almost 100% of the time the password is password. The
Yep.
username is admin, like or
Sad.
admin. Like, oh,
Yeah.
crazy.
You're playing Russian roulette. You're leaving your front door open, basically, is what's happening. Um,
Yeah.
Also, you remind me that there's routers and then there's smart routers. So now we have products like Eero that are, or even Google Home, that are so wonderful and so alleviate so much frustration if your internet is down, you know whether it's a problem with the actual internet coming into your home from your provider, or whether it's a problem with your hub, or whether it's just a problem with one device. You can see every device that's connected. You can create parental controls for, my kid's laptop and my kid's mobile device should not be able to connect to the Wi-Fi after 10 p.m. or whatever it is.
Yep.
The whole Wi-Fi shuts off and turns back on at a certain time. So suddenly you have a router that isn't just, it's a smart router. And you can really have so much more information as a homeowner about like what's going on with the Wi-Fi and be able to control it a lot more, in a nuanced way. And that is fun too. And
That is
and you
fun.
can create guest passwords. So the
Yeah.
smart home devices or, the family's devices can connect with your main username and password. If a guest comes over, you don't have to compromise your security by giving them the password to your Wi-Fi. You can give them a guest password. And that can be changed often or turned off if there's any kind of compromise. So anyway,
Yeah. Well, and even some routers have a whole separate broadcast that you can put all your IoT devices on.
Yes.
So, you've got your switches and everything like that all on this network that doesn't have access really to like your computers and like the stuff where you have critical data. So if
Yes.
these get hacked or whatever, then they have no communication with the stuff that like actually has your data.
Yes, agreed. And now we're getting into like IT stuff that you
I know,
know
right?
all about. And but yeah, but this is what, again, the compelling story. Like suddenly I can be like Sarah and know how to create an IT system, like a system for my house where there's different networks that are separate and one can't compromise the other. And that's really sophisticated stuff that most people haven't been able to do in their home. And so some of these routers are making that possible, which is great and improves the safety all the way around.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, last question because we're kind of running short on time. I'm loving this conversation, but what are some things that people don't realize products that they have can do? Like I just know so many people that just use their smart assistant as a glorified music player, and there's so much else that it can do. Like what are a couple of your top things where like oh my gosh, people, you can already do this.
Yeah, I mean, I think uh Alexa or Google Home, they can they can make calls for you, they can send texts for you, they can create reminders for you that live on your phone. So when you're out and about, if you wanted it to tell you something at 3 o'clock and you've stepped away from your house, it'll still remind you. They can check on your commute in the morning and tell you how the traffic is. They can redo your schedule for the day. They integrate with so many apps. So, for example, a reminder can be set on your favorite task manager that you use. And so now you have voice control to add a reminder, go buy this later or whatever. So, I think that if you have one of these speakers in your home, it's fun to kind of see what it can do. I mean, at the beginning, it was like, oh, you can play a trivia game and you can order a pizza, and like that's all great, and those are fun, like kind of novelty things. But I think some of these things are actually there's a great collection of products from Kohler now where they have Alexa built into bathroom mirrors. And so while you're brushing your teeth, you can get your schedule read to you. What's my first meeting? Hear about your traffic commute, things like that. Add reminders as you're, in the shower and you're like thinking your deep thoughts, and like send yourself an email, make a phone call, like while you're brushing your teeth, whatever you want to do. But you have this assistant in your bathroom with you while you're getting ready for the day to kind of help you mentally get ready for the day. And so, yeah, I think that those like really kind of helpful, like almost like virtual assistant type features are things that people forget about, even just reading you the weather. And then, of course, there's all kinds of things you can subscribe to, and podcasts, and special dedicated Alexa, games and alerts about sports and all of those kinds of things. So you can really customize to what you love. But some of those basic things I think people forget about using. If you're in the kitchen and you're cooking and you just want to make a phone call, and your hands are dirty or busy, just having Google Home or Alexa make a phone call for you is something people forget that they can do.
Well, I love that you mentioned that too, because a lot of parents are looking at getting their kid a smartphone or something when they're super young because they don't have a home phone anymore,
Right.
and they need a way to get a hold of their parents when the parents are away. But I'm always like, you can like have a smart assistant and just have that make the phone call. Your kid just has to say, "Hey, call mom," and then it's calling
Yeah.
mom. So
Yeah, or grandma, or whoever you authorize them to make the call to, and they can be video calls or just audio calls, depending on what device you have, if it's got a screen or not. Yeah, I love that as a response to the like, well, my kid needs a cell phone because it's like,
right.
well, there's other ways to do that.
Like, I promise you've already got it handled. Do you have a Google Home or an Alexa device?
Right, that's great.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else you wanted to mention? Where can people get more information about smart home stuff from you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at carleyk.com, and it's Carley, the letter K.com. And I'm at Carley Knobloch on Instagram. That's kind of primarily where I hang out. And yeah, I'm just kind of bouncing around. I'll be doing some satellite media tours throughout the rest of the year, with great products going coast to coast on news outlets, and at the Today Show, hopefully one or two more times before the end of the year. And just, like at a conference near you, just trying to like distill what's going on in the tech industry and filter it through my lens of wanting to, just like you, help women and moms and families kind of make sense of all this stuff. So we're on the same mission, but I love everything that you're doing with parental controls and really trying to walk people through that dizzying, you know, subject matter. And it's so important right now. And so anyway, I'm just so happy to be here, and thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. Hopefully I get to see you maybe this year at CES.
Yes,
Missed you the
I'm
last couple.
going to be back. I haven't gone for the last couple of years. I know you braved it out last year, and it looked like a ghost town, and it was like so sad.
It was insane.
I
Like,
know.
I was blown away.
Yeah,
Like,
it's normally
super.
for the unenlightened about the Consumer Electronics Show. Normally, just throngs hundreds of thousands of people,
Yeah.
and so some of your footage of those halls that I know are just usually packed with bros, were just dead, and it looked terrifying. But I am hoping to be back this year. I would love to see you, and I'd love to be
Yeah.
back on your show anytime. And
Perfect.
thanks. And if anyone has any questions about anything we talked about for me, just DM me on Instagram, or shoot me an email, and I'm happy to answer.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carly. It was awesome to see you. And hopefully I get to see you in a few months too. So we'll
Yay.
see you later.
Take care. Bye, everybody. Thank you.